I take for granted the fact that I was openly talking to my parents about things. I remember when I was in elementary school, I told everybody I wanted to be the president of the United States, and then that kind of shifted when I got in fifth grade and I wanted to be a lawyer, which is still my aspiration to this day. So I had always known that like education in college was something that I was going to do, and my parents were supportive. But we didn't talk about the financial side really until I got to college, and I am very lucky that my parents had thought ahead when I was younger to start saving. Because otherwise, I think those conversations would have been really different.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the MEFA podcast. My name is Jonathan Hughes, and you just heard from our guest on the show today. Now, I don't want to say too much about what she's going to talk about on the show. You'd rather hear her. But her own personal story is a great illustration of a point that we make all the time about college savings, and that is starting to save early and saving often, even if it's a small amount, makes a big difference. Now, it's easy for the parents of young children to look at the cost of college that are the subject of news stories and think, there's no way I can save that, so why try? I better just hope for a scholarship. And I understand that. I've had those thoughts myself. But what you're going to hear from our guest on the show today points towards a better path, one that takes advantage of the benefits of a dedicated college savings account, the 529 plan, college planning, and scholarship searches and applications. So when I heard her tell the story in a Zoom meeting, I said I have to have her on the podcast. So please enjoy meeting our guest and hearing her college savings success story, and I'll be back afterward to wrap things up.
Well, hi, I'm Bronwyn Crick. I'm originally from a small town in western Colorado called Eagle. I was born and raised there, went to high school there. I decided to come to Boston to pursue my education. I did my undergraduate degree at Suffolk University. I studied politics, philosophy, and economics, and then decided to add on one additional year to complete my master's degree. My master's degree is in global public policy. I'm super excited. I'm really excited to be here. I am very excited to talk about child savings and college savings.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that. Well, first of all, let's talk about how we met.
Yeah, of course. So, part of my graduate program required me to complete an internship. I wanted to do an internship that had to do with the more economic side of my degree. While my master's degree focuses on global policies, I respect the fact that global policies really start domestically and start locally. And I had great respect for what I call like economic equality and economic empowerment, which is how I ended up finding OEE, which is the Office of Economic Empowerment here in Massachusetts. I was the Baby Steps intern. So Baby Steps is a really cool program in Massachusetts that has qualified families with children under the age of 1 born in Massachusetts who get $50 into their 529 savings account. It just kind of seeds their college education and saving for the future. I mean, I don't know how much we want to go into it right now, but it's really a key basis of making sure that there's an equitable education future for children in Massachusetts.
And that sort of dovetails into why you specifically are on the show, because you have a great story from your own life about the 529 bullets. I wonder if you could tell it.
Yeah, so the reason why I was kind of drawn into Baby Steps, I shared in my interview when I was interviewing to be an intern. But I'm super passionate about college savings, and that comes from a place of my own background. I was really lucky. My entire college education was paid for by my 529, again, with the assistance of many scholarships and things like that. But the main vehicle for my college tuition was my 529 account. My dad opened that the day after I was born. And so that really kind of funded my education, and it made it a lot easier, and I had a lot more opportunities because of that savings.
And so, and you said was it your brother as well?
Yeah, my brother is also a 529 kid. So I'm here on the East Coast. My brother actually goes to school at the University of Utah in Utah, and he's studying film and media studies.
And so you had your entire undergraduate and graduate paid for by 529s and financial aid and scholarships.
Yeah. That was kind of how I paid for my education. I was really lucky. I worked really hard in high school and focused really on the benefits of financial aid, as well as my dad from a very young age has kind of incentivized me to save and save for college and education, because to him that was something that was super important.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that later, but now that you mention it, I'll bring that up. Is that something that, I guess it is, but if you could talk about, how that was treated in your house growing up. And then also my question after that is, didn't you tell me it was a relatively small amount that was being saved, right? For you every month, was that it?
Yeah, it's my understanding. My dad's told me it was $10 a month from the time that I was born. When he had financial ability, he would put a little bit more in, but that really was just kind of like a small deposits monthly for both me and my brother. Um, and I will say, like, the really important thing that I've learned is like where I grew up. It's a really rural town. I grew up in a ski resort town in Colorado, so the opportunities to go to college looks very different. So I have friends who went to trade school. 4-year university was never, taught to me in my like academic areas of my life as the only way forward. And, something that was really nice about my 529 account was that it's any educational cost. So, anything from trade school to, tuition to room and board, all of those educational costs are qualified. So if I had decided I wanted to go to trade school, which was not something that I was considering, but I knew my friends were, then that would have also applied. But I will say, like, in my household, my dad is an immigrant. My dad is from the UK. He didn't go to college, and didn't have a college education, but my mom went to Simmons here in Boston. And so she had a college education. So I was always told there were multiple opportunities, and I had the choice of where to go, whether that be a 4-year university, which is something that I was super passionate about and something that I wanted to pursue. I love studying. Now that I'm wrapping up my master's degree, I'm like, oh, I miss taking notes and things like that, which is just who I am. Um, but I was told that I had options, and it wasn't always a 4-year college, but that was something that I ended up choosing for myself as I got into my education in high school.
How young were you aware of the savings? Like, is this something that you always knew that there was this money being put aside for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I take for granted the fact that I was openly talking to my parents about things. I remember when I was in elementary school, I told everybody I wanted to be the president of the United States, and then that kind of shifted when I got in fifth grade, and I wanted to be a lawyer, which is still my aspiration to this day. So I had always known that like education in college was something that I was going to do. My parents were supportive, but we didn't talk about the financial side really until I got to college, and I am very lucky that my parents had thought ahead when I was younger to start saving, because otherwise I think those conversations would have been really different. Being a lawyer and working in those realms is a lot of school, and school is expensive. And so I'm really lucky that my parents were kind of able to have those conversations with me. And then I remember as I got into the later years of my college, specifically junior, senior year of high school, money did become a conversation that we talked about. And I think something that was really important to my parents when we were having those discussions was making sure that I understood the reality of what it means to be going to college and spending, money on education, because they're big price tags. I went to a private university, and that's a really hefty tag. I chose not to go to school at a state school in Colorado. So having conversations about what that looked like, what I had in my savings, what I needed in terms of financial aid, and then what I needed in terms of scholarships in order to really successfully complete my 4 years at Suffolk with as little debt as I possibly could.
So that was what I was wondering really. Did you start off with that savings and go, okay, this is what I would need, and then try to find that through scholarships? Did you apply for a lot of, it sounds like you did do that. And then did you find a lot of outside scholarships? Was it primarily scholarships from the college? How did that go?
Yeah, so I feel like every senior in high school has like the, "Oh my gosh, I have to, like, really think about what I'm gonna do." There's at least where I grew up, we had, like, scholarship week where we got to hear from local, businesses who sponsored people. So I was really lucky. The Vail Board of Realtors, which is, a real estate kind of agency in my hometown had a scholarship that I applied for that I got granted my second year of school, which helped my financial costs and burden. Suffolk University also gave me a massive financial aid package. So when I was looking at schools and looking at where I wanted to go, I said, okay, this is what I have saved. How much is going to ultimately come out of my own pocket or my savings with how much they're giving me? So I had some schools that gave me very small things. Like I remember one of the schools gave me $1,000 a semester, which was nothing comparison of like this school costs $90,000 a year. $1,000 maybe covers my books for 2 semesters. So looking at kind of what schools were offering and then, what local businesses were willing to support as well, on top of what I already had saved was also really important for me. And I made spreadsheets. My dad actually helped me make a spreadsheet and in Excel with like what I had in my savings account, my like 529 savings, what schools had offered me, what the real cost was, and then also being who he is. And he had another column like estimated cost of living where I was going. So I looked at going to school in Texas, and the cost of living in Texas was very different to living here in Boston. Um, and I remember my second year of college, like my second year of high school, I was like, my second semester of high school, I thought to myself, I was like, oh my gosh, I have like all these different offers and I have all this information. Now I just have to decide what's best for me.
Yeah, that is impressively analytical, but but it is a lot to go through and to decide.
Yeah,
And
definitely. And it's hard if you think that you're like the only one making those decisions, I don't think it's
mhm.
normalized to talk about, why you choose a school. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's the culture, it's the people." And I think that that's really important. I worked in orientation in at Suffolk. I think culture and people are really important, but also financial aspects are something that people are going to have to consider. And I think it's important to normalize that conversation in communities and be like, how can we better prepare ourselves to go forward?
Now, I'm wondering about the graduate school piece of this. Was this something that you were thinking about when you went into undergraduate school as well? Like, did you know
No.
graduate school after? No, you didn't?
Yeah, no. At first, like, when I came in as a freshman, I thought my path was very clear. I thought I was going to have 4 years at Suffolk, and then I was going to go to law school immediately after, which is 3 years. Um, and that was in my head my best course of action. Um, but as I got into my senior year of college and I was, you know, my college experience had looked very different because of COVID and things had changed. And I had some amazing professors and faculty at my school who really sat down and had the conversation with me. It was like, how are you best going to progress your career forward, and what's the best path? And that maybe is different than the path that you had thought of 4 years ago. And I remember I had a conversation with a professor before I had been offered an opportunity to apply for the master's program at Suffolk. And she said to me, she said, look at what all the options you have. You are 22 years old. You have plenty of options and you have plenty of interests. And then I got an email from Suffolk being like, we really highly encourage you to apply for our graduate program. It's a 1 year graduate program. It's in global public policy. And I was talking to some family members, and my uncle said to me, he said, what's the harm? He's like, this is something you're passionate about. This is something that you want to do. And overall, it's going to benefit your future career. And I was like, you're right. And I was like, oh, but then also grad school is really expensive. Like, I've heard all these horror stories. Um, and my parents were like, well, you still have money in your college savings. Like, that's not depleted yet. Like, you still have that money. And yeah, you were talking about saving it for law school, but this is an opportunity that's presenting itself that you're excited about.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, okay, might as well. So I applied, got into the program. And then I also applied for a fellowship, which is like a scholarship sort of on campus with orientation, which was an office that I was already involved with and very passionate about. And that basically made it so that my entire graduate master's degree was covered by financial aid, my fellowship, and the money that I had saved. So it just kind of worked out.
I understand that you have plans for your remaining funds in your 529 as well, right?
Yeah, so I had like at the end of my graduate school experience, I had maybe like $10 or $15 left in that account, but I was like, I at the time I'm currently planning on going to law school in the future, but I think my savings for that is going to look very different, just based off of my personal where I can put money into. But I also had a very good family friend who's worked with my parents and he works in finance. And he was like, I tell all my children the next important step in your life after college is retirement. And that's something that people are starting to have to plan for a lot younger. Um, and it's really cool. There's like a new policy that I know we've talked about, which is that you can roll your 529 over into a Roth IRA account. And something he said to me was very similar to what we say about college savings accounts, which is he's like, it can be $5 a month into this, and that's towards your future retirement. And he did the math for me and he was like, if you retire when you're 60, you'll if you do $10 a month for the next 40 years of your life, you'll have $1 million. And I was like, that's crazy to think about. That's so insane because I know I'll probably work past 60 years old, but also just knowing that that's the next big thing I'm saving for, as a young person is also really cool, that I didn't have to like open a different account and figure all that out. So it is really cool.
Is there any other piece of advice or anything you'd like to leave anybody with who, you know, is maybe has a young child and thinking about putting some money away for college and not sure if they can afford it, or they might be daunted by the high cost of college now and thinking I can only save a few dollars, so what's the point? Or just any piece of advice that you would give to anybody in this process.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm always so grateful for my parents. You know, my dad is a ski instructor. I don't know if I didn't lead with that, but my dad is a ski instructor. My mom works in banking now, but at the time that I was born, my mom worked for the resort, and so did my dad. And you know, that's a really fun career. It's ski bum, that kind of culture, but most of my friends' parents kind of had the same attitude, and I think it came from a culture of working hard for something that you care about. And part of that is $5 is a lot more than it's a lot more than you don't currently have. If you look at it that way, $5 is a part of a book, or anything. It's part of materials that you need for your nursing classes or something like that. So I think looking at it as a seed, we talk about seeds a lot in child savings account, to grow a tree, and this tree could have multi branches, so you can have your college, you can have your retirement, you have your where you live while you're studying. Things like that is all part of that educational future that's really important. So I guess the advice I would give is, even the smallest little bit could be life changing for your future education, or for your future retirement, or for your training. I have seen my friends do amazing things with training programs, with apprenticeships, and I hope to see myself do great things as I continue on my path towards education. But all of that comes from the fact that our parents just saved a little bit just 23 years ago. So that's my advice.
Well, Bronwyn, thank you so, so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm happy to be here.
All right, didn't I tell you what a pleasure it was to have Bronwyn on the show and to hear her story? So I'd certainly like to thank her for being willing to come on the show and share that story with us. And folks, if you liked what you heard today and you want to hear more from us on planning, saving, and paying for college and career readiness, well, then you can follow the show. And of course, you can do that wherever you find your podcasts. Oh, and please rate and review us, because it helps us to keep doing the show. I'd like to thank Sean Connolly, our producer. I'd like to thank AJ Yee, Lauren Dans, and Lisa Rooney, and Meredith Clement for their assistance in getting the show posted. Until next time, my name is Jonathan Hughes, and this has been the MEFA podcast. Thanks.